In this video, I'm going to talk to you about the lessons of starting poorly and also the tricks for starting well, so that whenever you speak in front of any audience, the first words you utter will be the ones that makes the audience decide to lean in and not lean out. The first thing I want to talk to you about is mindset. As the speaker, you naturally assume that people are there to listen to you. Well, they kind of are, but equally they're coming along with a lot of baggage. It could be the conversation they've had that morning, something going on at home, a difficulty in the office, or even something that's happened last week. And they come to your Zoom room or your in-person meeting with all of that garbage going on in their head. And your job as the speaker is try to get them to think, to be in the moment, to be in the present and listen to you and distract themselves from all of that noise that's going on in their head. So here's the lessons that you can take from the worst ways to start speaking when you're with an audience. The first thing that really grinds my gears is what I call housekeeping. The speaker that starts to talk about the fire exits, what to do if the alarm sounds, where the tea and coffee is, how to ask questions. All pivotal points when people are speaking. But my request to you is to get somebody else to deal with all of that housekeeping so that when you start speaking, eyes and ears are on you and not about housekeeping. Because housekeeping immediately detracts from the message that you need to deliver in the first few seconds. Linked to that is when we start the speech with things like agenda and objectives. Just before we start, I just want to remind you of the agenda for today. We'll start at 9 o'clock, we'll finish at 10:30 for a quick break, and then we'll move into the second part of the morning. Think about the agenda as being important to the construct of the morning or the afternoon, but get somebody else to go through the agenda, because when you're speaking, that's when time and focus needs to be on your message. So plan before you speak. Am I the person that needs to deliver the important message, or am I the warm-up act to the main item? Here's the third thing that you could not do when starting, which is all about me. Hello, before we start, my name is, and I've been doing this, and what gives me authority to speak to you today. The reason why they're in the room now is because of who you already are, or because what the agenda already says about you. We don't need to build any more trust, conviction, or authority apart from when we start to speak. And if there is an agenda needed about who you are, again, get the MC or the introducer to talk about that, so that when you start speaking, it's all eyes and ears on you, and there's no need to build any more credibility apart from what happens in those first few seconds. Here's my pet hate number 4, which is sorry. Sorry, I only just got notice of this speech yesterday. Sorry, I've been so busy, I've not had time to prepare. Sorry, there was another speaker, but I was brought in the last minute. It could be that the audience don't even know why you are on stage at the last minute or as a replacement. They've just come to give you their time, and therefore you honour them for that commitment. And as soon as you say sorry, it's building an expectation that this isn't going to be good enough because you've not prepared, or they're missing out on the main act. Just stand up on stage, own the stage with authority that you're the person that's there in the present. And it could be that by preparing late or preparing at the last minute or substituting for somebody else, it's going to be just as good, if not better, than what they were already expecting. Here's habit number 5 that you can get rid of, which is just starting too early. They're still filing in and everybody's settling down, and you've already started speaking and people aren't really paying attention, and you've lost the room before they're in the moment. We'll talk about how you can start with pause, authority and presence in the next 6 steps. So there's 5 habits that I'd love you to avoid in terms of how we start the speech. And now we'll talk about the 6 steps, perhaps more, that you can think of as to how you start your speech in a way that grabs the eyeballs, gets hold of the ears, and puts people in a state where you're ready to talk. You need to give them something compelling, interesting, to make them curious. They think, I'm interested and I want to learn more. Often for you as the speaker, that intention starts way before you even step on the stage. You're thinking about what are the first few words that I need to say that are going to make my message stand out and be interesting and compelling. And then in the green room or wherever you are ready to speak, you're preparing your own mindset and your own body to perform. You could be doing a tongue twister to get all the lips and tongue ready to speak. You could be putting some emotion and motion into your body, because where energy goes, focus flows. And you could also do some calm breathing activities just to center yourself and get you ready to go on stage, calm, confident, and composed. And then when we get on stage, remember, let's not start too early. Go to the middle of the stage and just take in the audience for a minute. Look around, get some eyeballs. And then standing tall, we might just pause for impact. And then we deliver the first line like it's something that they've never ever heard before, because they haven't. It's the first time they've heard your speech. And no matter how many times you've delivered it, make sure that this time it feels like the first time. Once we grabbed that moment, it's then how do we start speaking? Option number one is you could tell a little story. Stories are well known for capturing people's attention because it's something they could relate to. But the story needs to be relevant to the people that are in the room. Your story helps them perhaps experience, visualize, or feel something that is important as to what happens next with your speech. The stories need to be short, maybe 30 to 60 seconds, just enough to start to build the curiosity and intrigue. You might start, imagine me sitting on the train looking at. It's just a moment in time that helps people imagine where you were at a particular point in time when you started to first think about how the rest of the speech is going to flow. And the moment that they start imagining is the moment that they start listening. And you've already started to capture their attention. The other thing you could do is to start with a question. Questions immediately start to make people stand up and notice because the brain is actually in a loop looking for the answer. Questions make their mind search for answers. And sometimes the answer will come later on in your speech, or you might just leave it hanging there as a dopamine loop that you're going to circle back on later. That's tip number 2, start with a question. The third way is you might start with a quote. Now the quote needs to be meaningful, relevant, and also not something that is going to detract overall from your message. It's going to help set the scene. We don't use a quote to sound clever. We use the quote to support your point. You introduce it, you explain it, and you connect with it. Here's one from Maya Angelou that we might use if we're wanting to talk about self-esteem. If you're always trying to be normal, you will never know how amazing you can be. Imagining starting a speech just like that. You walk out on stage, you pause, you look around, and then you deliver that first sentence. If you're always trying to be normal, you will never know how amazing you can be. Words today from Maya Angelou that sets the scene for how we want to think about ourselves in moments that matter. Hopefully you can see how a quote can start to already build anticipation and intrigue and curiosity about what's going to come next. Something else you could do is start with a fact. There's nothing that grabs attention more than starting with something that is, gosh, wasn't expecting that. Especially when the fact is backed by evidence. And again, this will link to the context of your talk or even what you're being asked to talk about today on that particular topic. It could be an unexpected number. It could be a fact going way back in time. And their mind is designed just to do one thing, which is to go, really? Hadn't imagined that. So if we were talking about public speaking, for example, A quote could be this one. According to the Harvard Business Review in 2022, 45% of professionals turn down promotions, citing the fear of public speaking. Today, I'd like to make sure that you're not one of those 45% because we're going to give you 6 tips as to how to start a speech. Can you see how the statistic can link to the message to build authority in the way that you start? The 6th one is to let a visual picture create the words before you even speak. Remember, there's lots of different ways that people learn. Some are visual, some are acoustic, some like to read words, some like to feel things. A visual image can help connect all the dots together. Imagine talking about freedom of speech, and in front of you is that iconic picture from Tiananmen Square of a man standing in front of a tank. And perhaps that's just the visual that you start your presentation with, and say nothing else, but allow people to wonder, imagine, and feel how it could have been standing in front of that tank. And then from there, your words start. And sometimes we don't even need to explain the visual. We just let it create the scene, and then from there, we start our speech. The final one is to start with a joke, or try to be funny. Be careful with this one, because if you're known for humour, then you can probably land it. But if you're not known for humour and you're stepping out of your comfort zone, it might not be the best scenario to start with, because your joke might not be funny to the people that are listening. And if immediately your joke turns into a groan or a grumble, you've lost their attention. Let's try this one. I have the psychic ability to predict what's in presents. It's a gift. You see, it would have just bombed completely, because I know that indirectly I do have humour in my speeches, but I'm not known to be funny. I wouldn't normally ever start with a joke. So there you go. It's all about not what am I going to say first, but instead, how am I going to grab their attention? Can the first things that you say grab the attention of the audience? And you know, one of the best ways to find out is to practice and rehearse and ask somebody to listen to the first few words or lines of your speech to see if it's interest or uninspiring. The best way to learn is by practice before doing. If you've loved this video, watch out for the next one, because we'll be talking about how we finish strong. Now that we've started, the ending is just as important, because from the ending comes the call to action, and that honours people's time for the time they spent with you. Please subscribe, follow, and comment to say what you've enjoyed and also what you're going to implement. Because after all, ideation without implementation is merely hallucination.